unless the removal of the body is likely to be made the occasion of a public demonstration. Wow. Just let that sink in for a second. It's a pretty jarring phrase, right? I mean, it sounds almost like a dry zoning ordinance or, I don't know, a tax regulation. But this incredibly clinical, purely bureaucratic language, it was actually used by the British colonial government in India to manage the highly volatile political aftermath of an execution. Welcome to The Explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled to share this historical deep dive with you today, mostly because it's kind of going to fundamentally change how we think about state power.
So today we're exploring the bureaucracy of death, colonial India's execution protocols. We are going to objectively unpack actual, real-life historical memorandums from 1914 and 1944. And through these perfectly preserved documents, we're going to reveal the chillingly detached administrative protocols of the British colonial justice system. Because, what exactly happens when the ultimate human punishment is just reduced to a series of interdepartmental memos? Well, let's find out.
Here's a quick look at our agenda for today. First, we'll look at the bureaucracy of death itself. Second, the execution timeline. Third, procuring the hangman. Fourth, the day of execution. And finally, preventing public demonstrations.
All right, Section 1, the bureaucracy of death.
Think about the sheer juxtaposition here for a minute. You have the heavy, final reality of capital punishment, and it's being completely reduced to administrative stamps and filing cabinets. We're looking at primary source documents, specifically a 1914 directive addressed to the Inspector General of Civil Hospitals in the United Provinces, alongside a 1944 cover letter regarding a memorandum for carrying out executions passed by a general court-martial on Indian soldiers. So we aren't just talking about history in the abstract here. We're looking right at the literal paperwork that set the machinery of death into motion. You see the typewritten font, the official stamps, the signature blocks. It is the absolute banality of administration applied directly to mortality.
Let's actually zoom in on those 1914 rules, because honestly, they're fascinating. The government issued strict mandates to civil surgeons. Now, these are medical doctors, mind you, but the memo dictates they must remain at their headquarters for 24 hours prior to an execution. They absolutely cannot delegate this to a deputy or an assistant surgeon. And what are these non-delegable duties they have to stick around for? Well, they include personally testing execution ropes and managing the disposal of important telegrams. The state mandated that these doctors literally drop all other medical work. Work meant to save lives, just to handle the administrative logistics of ending one.
Moving on to Section 2, the execution timeline.
In the 1944 military document, which is labeled Memorandum C, we see exactly how the colonial military mathematically calculated the end of a life. First, the warrant is received, and from that exact moment, there has to be an interval of exactly 3 clear days. Why 3? Well, the document specifically states this minimum interval is calculated based on the time it takes for a letter to reach the next of kin and for that kin to actually make the journey to the condemned man. It's literally a logistical equation. The maximum interval, including any appeals, was strictly capped at 1 month. It was basically an assembly line of justice. It was efficient, prompt, and strictly scheduled.
The crucial point here is captured perfectly in this one sentence straight from the memo. Once fixed, the date should not be altered save in very exceptional circumstances. The rigidity of this colonial bureaucracy is just staggering. Once the dates were plugged into the calendar and the next of kin were notified, the machinery locked into place. You can almost hear the gears turning.
All right, Section 3, procuring the hangman.
How exactly does a remote military outpost source the equipment and personnel for something like this? Well, the memo draws a really sharp contrast based on location. If there's a civil jail nearby, you just use their existing gallows, coordinating with the Public Works Department. It's almost treated like booking a conference room. But if there is no civil jail, the garrison engineers must literally build a gallows from scratch. The rules state this temporary execution site must be carefully selected, and I quote, away from the bazaars and not too near the barracks. It had to be out of sight, just a hidden temporary interruption to daily military operations.
And the instructions outline how military authorities literally ordered a hangman the exact same way you'd order office supplies. Applications for the services of a hangman were made by telegram. They required the hangman to bring all requisites, explicitly including a rope the strength of which must be properly tested. Most shockingly, the memo casually notes that a convict hangman could be supplied. A prisoner would actually be escorted by a minor jail official to the military station to execute a soldier before being returned to his cell. It's a pretty striking example of the colonial system utilizing its own incarcerated population to carry out its most extreme punishments.
Section 4, the day of execution.
The memo totally transforms here from a logistical planner to like a stage director. 4, that is the exact number of people allowed. The military was completely terrified of these executions becoming public spectacles, so admission to witness the execution was restricted entirely to adult male relatives of the condemned man or other respectable male adults, up to a strict maximum of 4. Extreme privacy was for sure the overarching goal here.
The protocol for the day was clinical, precise, and broken down into 4 highly orchestrated steps. Step 1. The prisoner is conveyed in a closed vehicle under military escort to prevent anyone from seeing him. Step 2. The escort halts near the scaffold, turns about, and a staff officer reads the charge, the finding, the sentence, and the warrant out loud. Step 3. The condemned is conducted to the gallows by the escort and the sentence is carried into effect. Step 4. The escort marches away, leaving only a party to superintend the body while a medical officer officially reports that death has taken place. It is a completely sanitized, documentary-like procedure that deliberately stripped all emotion from the event.
Which brings us to Section 5, Preventing Public Demonstrations.
For the colonial government, a dead soldier could be far more dangerous than a living one. The rules detail exactly how to handle body disposal. Normally, a body would be made over to friends or relatives, but there's a huge conditional clause for this procedure, unless the removal of the body is likely to be made the occasion of a public demonstration. If the officer commanding the station felt that handing over the remains would spark a riot, an uprising, or turn the executed man into a martyr, well, he had the unilateral authority to withhold the body entirely. This was a highly calculated system for suppressing martyrdom. If the body was withheld, it was to be burned or buried entirely within the jail walls. They allowed a maximum of exactly 4 friends or relatives to attend this hidden funeral. And to ensure the ceremony didn't become a political rally, it was strictly directed by the senior Christian, Hindu, or Mohammedan official of the jail itself, literally a state employee. If they were outside a jail, an Indian military officer directed the rites. So the colonial state maintained absolute control over the narrative, right down to the final prayers spoken over the unmarked grave.
Finally, let's pull back a bit and look at the geographical scale of this entire system. There's an appendix attached to the end of the memorandum that lists the specific designated districts in the United Provinces responsible for carrying out these protocols.
We can map out this network pretty clearly. Major districts like Agra, Allahabad, Lucknow, and Meerut are explicitly designated as concentration jails for condemned convicts. But the detail that really stands out here is regarding Muttra. Out of all these major districts, the jail at Muttra was exclusively designated for female convicts. This single, tiny line in an appendix reminds us that this vast, mechanized bureaucracy of death processed not just mutinous male soldiers, but men and women across the entire province, neatly categorized and sorted into specific geographical hubs.
So, we've looked at the ropes, the telegrams, the 3-day timelines, and the secret jail funerals. Which leaves us with an absolutely critical question to take away from this explainer today. When state violence is reduced to telegrams, strict schedules, and administrative appendices, what happens to our perception of justice? Does the paperwork sanitize the reality, or does it somehow make it even more chilling? Think about how bureaucratic systems in any era function to detach our humanity from extreme consequences. Thank you so much for diving into these documents with me today. Keep questioning the fine print, and I'll see you in the next explainer.